welcome to all of you to our December Spotlight session here with a lot of different time zones as we figured out. And since there is the Christmas time in Germany is coming, and this is the last Spotlight session in the year, I changed my Zoom background to a Christmas woodcut decoration. It took me quite a while, but AI was helping me to carve the whole thing. But I'm actually not in Germany right now. I arrived a few hours ago in Hainan in China, the island in the far south of China, known as the Hawaii of China. And I was leaving from Berlin with the -2 degrees, and here is about 28 degrees plus. Big change. And it's 6 p.m. here. Vaika is in Berlin. Annirban is in Bangalore. We have completely different time zones. And I'm here, why I'm here in Hainan, I'm here with my hosts from also GDTA members, the Communication University of China, which is up and running in Beijing since lots of years. And they have since 12 years, they have a D school in Beijing, and they have a new campus here in Hainan. And tomorrow we'll open the new D school in Hainan. It's a small opening because we just start to train the trainers. So on the long run, we'll for sure have the chance also to sneak in here in Hainan, have a spotlight session or something else, maybe even one of the yearly conferences. Let's move from China to India to Bangalore and to our dear friend and GDTA member Anirban, Bhattacharya, sorry. So the GDTA Spotlight, which we are doing since lots of years now as a monthly online session, is as always trying to host people who are inside of the GDTA members, but also externals. And this time we have a longtime friend who was taking classes in Potsdam. He is an entrepreneur. He's a co-founder of the Painted Sky. They call themselves the pioneers and leaders in experiential leadership development and training. They do a lot of executive coaching. His background is corporate experience, more than 15 years in sales, marketing, business development. He has experience with ITC hotels, American Express, ICI, Prudential, Metro, Cash and Carry. This is what I know quite good. PwC, lots of big companies in the United States, in India, and in Europe. Ban is also a speaker. He's spoken to more than 100 events, conferences all around the world. Last one actually was, which I missed, was the one in Izmir at our yearly conference. And you didn't give a speech, you gave a workshop. And Annirban is one of the co-founders of the GDTA. So he was giving a workshop together with our dear friend, with our Fiona Chambers from Ireland. And they were actually addressing the indigenous inspiration or creation. And I was so interested to watch that, but I missed it. So I'm really happy that Anirban is today give us a chance not to do the workshop, but actually to learn from 5 tribal women he was working with. And I think right now it is the best time to talk about indigenous inspirations, because we are all driven by AI. We are all driven by technology. We are all driven by huge companies, by the big players, but looking to the people somewhere in the countryside, how creative they are, and get inspired by them, that is kind of opposite of what the big clash things is discussing right now. So I'm really happy that you are spending our time with us and sharing your 5 design lessons with 5 tribal women. My light is fading off here. I have natural light. Probably I'm sitting in the dark pretty soon, but give the light to Anirban and spotlight to Anirban from the Painted Sky in Bangalore. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Yuli. Thank you, everyone. Wow, good to see so many folks joining in. It's a Monday afternoon in India, and I was telling Raika that I'll be very surprised if 5 people show up, and then suddenly I'm seeing about 40. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Yuli, and thank you, Raika, for setting this up. So my name is Annirban. I will not take you into my last name. By the time the next GDTA conference happens, some of you might just be able to get it by then. So let's just park that for later. But yeah, I represent a company called The Painted Sky. We're in the leadership space for close to 20 years. But I have a presentation, so pardon me for taking you through that for in the next about 20, 30 minutes. And then definitely as per the spotlight norms, I would love to have questions. And yeah, then let's see where this goes. I must kind of tell you that this has been my work for the last, I mean, I got inspired by this 6 years ago and been my work close, 40% of my work for the last 4 years. But this is work in progress, and this is so deep and so vast an area. I think this will be work in progress for the rest of my life. And so you will have to pardon me if my presentation is sketchy in some parts or appears superficial, because, you know, it's a rabbit hole. The deeper I go, the more I discover. But it's been exciting. And today I just want to give you a snapshot of that. That's all I have time for. But let me take you through this presentation, and it might just be more useful than me just jabbering. Let me go. Right. I think Raika reached out to me a couple of months ago, and I actually presented 3 or 4 different ideas, different themes for today's spotlight, including, all in different areas of work. And I'm actually quite happy that this got picked up, because this is something I've been talking about in a few conferences in India. And this is an area of very strong interest for me for reasons, for all the right reasons. First of all, I work closely with Indigenous Inspirations. I think going back to our roots is very essential today, considering where we find ourselves. I've been in design thinking for now 15 plus years, running workshops and classes and coaching sessions for corporates primarily. And so design thinking is very close to me. And of course, my specialization is design for inclusion. So where I've worked a lot with women and getting women as in the room, at the table, be it building the right culture to building the right products. So all of these things come together in this little talk that I intend to do. And at the bottom, what you see as almost like the subtext, that's essentially what I'm working on. And towards the end, I hope I'll have a few minutes to tell you about that, the global generational stewardship principle that we're building here. So very quickly, yeah, as I mentioned, since 2006, we've been at this. That's me trying to paint. Please don't laugh at the output. But the entire idea is that it's the experience and the process that matters. So the Painted Sky has grown since 2006. Now we've done workshops for 100 plus countries. We have that kind of a client base, 18 countries. Interestingly, Ubiquity, which became actually the GDTA member in 2020, doesn't exist anymore. We were a full-fledged design school in Bangalore, the first design thinking school in India that way, focusing primarily on corporate teams, corporate workshops. But then COVID happened, and after paying rent for 18 months with no business, we felt there's no reason to run this anymore. We are a business. And so in 2021, Ubiquity got fully absorbed into the Painted Sky, which is where we are today. We work across the world, as I said, 18 odd countries, 120 odd clients. You'll find a very interesting mix from the government of Delhi to American Express Bank to the World Bank to Mercedes-Benz. All kinds of companies work with us, all in the space of design thinking, whether it's, as I mentioned, employee experience, employee engagement, to customer experience, product, services, all kinds of things in between. We also work with academia, not very significantly, but primarily India is so large and it keeps us busy with Indian schools, barring the Middle East college at the bottom that you see, which is in Oman. We did a lot of train the trainer programs for design thinking for their staff. But yes, we work with management schools as well as technology institutions. The 5 on top are India's premier schools, which regularly produce CEOs of companies like Microsoft and Google that you see in the world today. Okay, so coming back to this, I think I just wanted to kind of put this out first because, I've been in industry for 30 odd years. And what does 30 years of working with corporates give you? A lot of arrogance, a lot of hubris, a lot of, sense of self-worth. And then when I started working with indigenous communities, one of the first things I realized was in their simplicity and in their, I would say, ability to literally go with first principles in most of the things in which they're solving problems. They taught me humility. They taught me that however much I think I know, it's not anything compared to what their ages, or I would say generations of wisdom that they bring with them, the knowledge that they bring with them. So I want to start with that note of humility that I'm here to learn. I am learning with them. And my objective now is to take that learning outside and see if that learning can impact the way we are solving problems, designing solutions, etc. So this line, therefore, is very important for me because it has really been 5 years of learning how little I know. So that's the background today, that it's been explorations with my team for the last 6 odd years. We have done field work with a lot of these communities that I'm going to talk about. Also, with some others, it's been more secondary research as well as dialogues and workshops online. It is ongoing. We are doing a lot of work with institutions in India, and there are a bunch of you on this call who are showing a lot of interest, and I'm very thankful for that, for research opportunities and collaboration opportunities. And I also want to tell you that there is no claiming that I know more. I mean, this whole indigenous communities know a lot, vastly more than us. And my only objective here is to kind of do the research, learn from them, and figure out how that learning can be brought to our circles. Because a lot of that innovation is hiding in plain sight, and we are missing them in our world today. So that's the background. I wanted to set that almost like a disclaimer before I start my talk. And let's understand, therefore, what is indigenous, because, it's one of the words that's floating around quite a bit, but this is the Webster's dictionary definition, and I think it's fairly close to the real thing. That's, first of all, it's native knowledge, native cultures, native people, and they have existed for a long time. They're many cases, as I'm going to talk about, they're ancient, some cases going back to 2,000 to 6,000 years of cultures that exist, and processes and innovations that exist since then. Globally, we have close to 500 million people who fall under the indigenous tag as per the United Nations. India obviously has one of the largest populations of indigenous peoples that you'll see. And like everywhere else, the 104 million Indian indigenous peoples are always under threat, because in many parts of India, they are also on resource-rich forests, resource-rich lands. So whether it's for mining, it's for irrigation, for hydroelectric power projects or highways, it's their land that's always under threat. So they're protected, but I don't think they get preserved enough like any part of the world. Neither is their wisdom or knowledge promoted enough, which is where I got started on this entire conversation. So the 5 tribes I want to highlight today are in 5 different states, actually. 2 of them are in extreme northeast of India. One is right at the heart of India in Madhya Pradesh. That's the large circle in the center. Then one in Odisha towards the east, southeast, and one deep south in Tamil Nadu. These are all different states of India. We are 29 states. And I'm only talking about these 5 states and 5 tribes that I've interacted with. So it's my interactions with the communities as such that I want to talk about. And when I'm talking to them, when I'm interacting with these tribes, with these indigenous peoples, there's also the discovery of how important women are in these communities. Curiously, many of these communities are extremely patriarchal. Okay, they are ancient and patriarchal as it gets, but I'm fascinated and inspired to see how influential women are, how smart they are to work around the system and get work done. And there's a lot of learning, even if I don't look at design principles, there's just a lot of learning for leadership out there. So these are the 5 tribes I want to talk to you about. And each of them I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about, and then bring all the learnings I've had from them into 5 principles. It's not that one tribe has given me one principle. It's a synthesis of learnings that I've brought together as the 5 principles. I'm going to take you through each of them. But before that, I want to tell you my story a little bit. And I want you to imagine a deep valley and imagine a bridge. And my valley is in a remote village area in Northeast India in the state of Meghalaya. Pardon my drawing. I was just telling Yuli and Raika that no AI was used or harmed during the preparation of this presentation. So this is all hand drawn, okay? Free shapes on PowerPoint, so they're terrible, but that's just the way it's about indigenous wisdom. It has to be a little analogous, right? I mean, that's the whole objective here. And you have a deep valley and you have villages on both sides that want to connect. Now, this is in such remote mountains that to build a bridge to take steel and concrete up there is expensive, often not feasible, and really very difficult. So what these communities do is they plant ficus trees on both sides and also connect the valley with bamboos. These are areca bamboos, hollow plants, hard. And what they do is, and pardon my drawing, they let the roots of these plants grow through these bamboos. These are hollow. So over time, these roots grow in opposite directions, connecting the valley, both sides. Then as the trees grow, the roots get stronger. And then they connect the roots, weave the roots around the branch, around the bamboo, and end up getting what we call a living roots bridge. So I wanted to start with this because this was the source of my inspiration into getting into this kind of study. The living roots bridge is a magnificent structure. It connects valleys far from each other at times. I mean, not too far because obviously there's a thing called gravity, but they exist today as they have over 1,000 years. And they connect communities across the remotest part of Northeast India in the state of Meghalaya. Yes, children go to school, as you see on the picture on the left. For older bridges, they even put stones so that it's easier to walk. You can even bike across. You can take a bicycle or a motorbike across. It doesn't take more than that. It's not wide enough for more than that, but it's very good as a connection between two very, very remote locations. And that's where I found myself in 2019, early 2019 on my travels. And that has led to this whole conversation through discoveries, dialogues, and given me a direction for work that's still going on. So the background to that, and again, those of you who I have bored in the past with all my talk on 7 generations thinking and generational thinking is here, that we are living through the 6th great extinction as we know that, right? Only 15% of the UN SDGs will be met by 2030. We are busting the 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature target. We are not going to meet that for various reasons. So one of the things, and of course, we are also seeing the impact of digital on our lives, on children. So we are living through a really difficult period is the way I see it. And so my work takes me back to those traditional design and development practices to understand how did the balanced growth of the past work that didn't harm people or planet, but also got the job done. And what I discover that they have been tested, they are low carbon, they are circular, they are sustainable, and they maintain community values and community linkages through time. And just like in design, we believe in prototyping and testing, they have worked and been improved over time. And they work in the local climate. And my task, as I see it, is how do we take that learning and bring it to the larger world? Of the 5 tribal women, therefore, that is the common thing that I've found, that all of them have deep connections to their roots, to the land, water, forests, mountains, rivers, and they see themselves often as safekeepers, as guardians and defenders. This automatically leads them to have community bonds because they're living off the land and they have to work with each other, depend on each other. And that connection is extremely strong. All of them take tremendous pride in their traditional knowledge, and they are often enough passed through songs, stories, and art as we see it, not in the traditional ways of education. And some of them, some practices, and I'm going to talk about it very quickly, really defy what we have always thought as modern and mechanical approaches to maybe agriculture, to engineering, to architecture, because what they're doing goes against pretty much all we have learned in our universities, which have had pardon my saying so, very strong colonial needs and certain development goals that might not be great for community or planet. But when I work with them, I discover that some of their innovations truly blow my mind because they're against pretty much all that I've learned in my formal education. So I want to start with the Khasi women. They are found in northeast of India, remote northeast of India. And these are the people who build those bridges. They are the people who are very well known for their bamboo art, also bamboo science, the way they can weave bamboo and build structures with bamboo. Each of these bridges take 15 to 30 years to come together, but they last 3 to 500 years. And this is the engineering marvel that I want to call out here, is think of any bridge that you use steel and concrete to build. They weaken over time. There's wear and tear. But here, as the tree grows and grows in strength, the bridge becomes stronger. I don't know of any other instance where with time, your architecture actually becomes better. And I found this to be absolutely fascinating. The Khasi are also unique that they are a matrilineal society, which means inheritance passes to the girl child. And in this case, officially, to the youngest daughter. Considering she's young, she's likely to last longer. It's a fairly practical thinking, but that's how it works in them. And the women really are the backbone of both the design and maintenance of it, because in most of these communities, and across these 5 communities I'll talk about, we see the men have more traditional roles of going out, whether as hunters or gatherers, or they're going into farming, and maintaining a lot of these structures and monuments and architecture is often the role of women. And women in the Khasi community are extremely active in understanding the structures, the architecture, and the lay of the land, and building using their traditional knowledge. I move to the next crowd, which is the Apatani women. The Apatani are also in the northeast, even further remote northeast. This is near the China border in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. It's actually the border of India and China. These people, again, very strong connection to the ground, are weavers of bamboo and cane. But what I've found very fascinating is what I've highlighted in yellow. They cultivate rice and fish simultaneously on the same piece of land. Now, I don't know how familiar many of you are with agricultural practices. It is almost unheard of anywhere else. That you have rice cultivation happening, which is paddy, which is water intensive. But at the same time, it's absolutely fascinating to see that in that shallow water, they have fish growing. The fish also eat up the insects to stay alive and keep the rice clean and ensure that the rice growth is absolutely fine. Now, this is against the entire idea of an industrial monoculture principle, which, our fertilizer companies and our seed companies would like us to do. Vast tracts of land where you only cultivate one produce. But through understanding of this entire principle, they can really, really manage their resources well. And in that limited monsoon season that they get, make the most out of this extremely ecologically sound approach that maintains fertility of the soil and health of the fish. And this, again, is where women play a lot of role because of their closeness to the soil. They're often the ones who are building these box-like structures on the ground, which contain the water, let the paddy grow or the rice grow, and also keep the fish contained. In the interest of time, I'm moving on. I'm now moving west to the heart of India, heart of this massive country, to the Baiga tribe. They are in Madhya Pradesh, which is right in the center of the country. And they're known for their breathtaking tattoos all over them. Women are the only ones who do tattooing, simply because they also have a very interesting role. They are the doctors of that community. They follow something called ethnobotany, which, that's just a Western term. It is just the understanding of forest medicinal plants. And this is another community I've actively worked with, the first 2 and the third. And I've been blown away by the depth of their knowledge. It's not general, medicinal plants kind of a thing you see. Their depth is so strong and so intelligent. They can mix things and follow things up. They have entire procedures and remedial mechanisms that run for months to get people working, particularly in the space of gynecological practices. This is where they are absolutely incredible. You will be surprised to know that child health and maternal health in the Baiga community is the highest among all indigenous communities in India and considered among the highest in the world. And it's almost solely dependent on their understanding of traditional plant-based methods through which they can help mothers and newborn babies live healthy or survive the early hours of their birth. Moving to the fourth, and just after that, I'll wrap it up, is the Toda women down south. Now, this is in Tamil Nadu, and here they are well known for their embroidery. And in those embroidery is their culture. The girls do the embroidery. It's lunar cycles to pastoral scenes to natural scenes, flowers, etc. This got geotagged in 2012, and it is one of the highest selling today of ethnic or indigenous wear that we have in India. The Toda women embroidered shawls, as we call it, which are essentially stoles. And they also stand for their culture, for their feminism. They stand for their empowerment, very strong in this. You work with them and you are blown away by how strong the women are in a deeply patriarchal community. And the last one, my favorite community, actually, unfortunately, I haven't much worked with them yet, but February onwards, I'm spending a lot of time with them in the eastern state of Odisha. Now, they're also the one that is under the most threat because their land happens to be on the most mineral-rich and coveted land for industry, for mining, for irrigation, agriculture, highway, airport projects, etc. What these folks are famous is, again, like the Apatani, they can simultaneously plant, and hold your breath, 80 crops on a single piece of land and successfully harvest it. This is incredible. I've never heard of this anywhere. But this multi-crop farming is, again, low water usage, and they maintain soil nutrients. Zero chemical fertilizer, entirely organic, and the diversity of their produce is just incredible. They worship the hills as their gods and call themselves Jharniya. Jharna is the Oriya word for a waterfall. And so they're protectors of waterfalls. They are deeply, deeply, I would say, entrenched in the land which they are working with. And they also are the real commandos in the forest, often enough with nothing but sticks. If you're ever in their forest, don't be surprised if you suddenly see these women with sticks chasing you out or coming aggressively at you, asking you, why are you there? Because there's a lot of poaching happening as well as illegal logging. So they are the first line of defense for these extremely ancient forests that we have in that part of the country. So these are the 5 women that I've been studying, or rather 5 communities that I've been studying, I would say. And their women in the middle have been really inspiring. And so let me quickly, in the interest of time, move to the design principles. And I again want to remind you, this is not that the Khasi gave me one and the Apatiri gave me one more. No, it's understanding that a lot of design principles are common. And we can synthesize them down to understand what is so great about the work they're doing. And each of them are learnings for me. And I do that in my design thinking work. We've done 45,000 hours of design thinking work in the corporate and academic spaces. And over the last 2 years, a lot of this is using this learning, this knowledge. So let me take you through these 5. And for each of them, I want to tell you about my learning as well. Now, we all talk empathy. I mean, design thinking is nothing without empathy. But here, empathy is about working on the ground and being with the people who you are building. So living with them, working with them on the ground, and understanding that you can't learn empathy in a classroom. And this is what I make our product managers and engineers do when I make them sit at the back of a food delivery executive to ask them to go out and say, live their life to know what they face. Only then can you be really empathetic. But coming back to this is deep. The whole immersive process of empathy to live with people to understand is something that I learned from them. And the women, because of their cultural sensitivity and often their position as mothers or caregivers, are deeply empathetic and understanding when they immerse themselves to understand what's really happening. And this to me is the how. They lead to the how, which is actually what we do to solve. My favorite outcome that I learned is that about constraints. We all know theory of constraints. I'm talking to a group of peers. We teach theory of constraints. But here constraints are at a different level. There is often no education. There's no often drinking water, running water. They're so remotely located that you do not have access to shops for even basic tools and implements. So you work with what you have. You build tools and implements with natural resources, and they're effective. And how? You build tunnels, you build houses, you build bridges with very little that what you get from the soil and what you can give back to the soil. And I just want to quickly talk about the last constraint, which is gender. It's a huge constraint in patriarchal societies, but I'm so impressed with how they're working through them. My learning is that we need to find different ways of solving problems. It can't be 5 steps or 6 steps and 5 circles or 6 circles, and that's point A to point B. These are non-linear ways of solving problems. We need to learn by understanding, particularly our global north thinking, where I see companies or teams completely frozen when their resources are not available to them. When we work with them, we realize that they can just shrug their shoulders and make the most with what they have. This is again very important. I think we say that, and I just want to talk about the learning at the bottom. We say when we work with design, that design is day one topic, right? You don't talk of design at the end to kind of make things fancy. So is sustainability. And when you live under conditions where your sustainability is under threat, you take it as your only priority. That's where you build with sustainability in the mind in everything you're doing. Those of you, Janice here would know, who attended my workshop in Ishmael would know that that was the only conversation we had, that your decision making has to have sustainability at the center. And that to me is a great learning, that everything else will fall in place. But are we thinking sustainability as a day one topic, not an afterthought or window dressing? And the last two, let me quickly do it and then wrap up for questions. That knowledge can come from everywhere. There are no user manuals in these communities. There are no PDFs, no YouTube videos. Stories are passed mother to daughter, daughter to daughter, uncle to nephew. And they're written down in heads. They're painted on walls and learned and retained. So the whole and the other way of learning is action learning, learning by doing. All of them learn by doing the walk. They're out there practicing it, failing and learning. I think that to me has been a great discovery, that we need to be more out on the field. And I tell my students all the time, get out of the classroom, get out of the classroom, get out of your offices, go out there where the action is. Only then will we learn. But overall, also understanding that learning can be emotional, cultural, through songs, through art. So our ability to observe and learn through, if nothing else, absorbing what's happening around us is very essential. And sometimes I find that we are not doing enough to make these orthogonal, non-linear learning approaches become more mainstream. And the last one, I'll close out after that, is what is leadership? And that's what you learn from them. In these societies, women have very little power, barring maybe a couple of matrilineal societies in the Northeast. But you should see how they lead, how ferocious they can be when their land or the rights of their children are at stake, how they will fight, and also how they'll lead from the back, lead alongside, lead collaboratively, always focus on co-creation, and never let go of relationships. I am so honored to go back to them 3 years, 5 years after I first met them and see their smiles and how welcoming they are. It takes a lot to win trust, because we have cheated them and betrayed them for generations, exploited them. But if we can, there's just so much to learn from their leadership styles. They teach every day in that collaborative, humble way. It's not pat down leadership. It's at the grassroots, but leading together towards an outcome. So these are the 5 that I wanted to bring out. I know I'm rushing through it in the interest of time. I can probably spend a lot more time. I should spend a lot more time doing it. But I just wanted to give you a glimpse of it, that I mean, as I mentioned, this is what I do now 40% of my time, and I'm just loving it. And I'd love to see more of this getting done. So I want to quickly take you through in 1 minute, what are we doing with this? One of the challenges we have seen that indigenous innovation has always existed, but it's never really done, commercially well, simply because it's difficult to scale. It's found in remote areas, but particularly in medicine, food, and farming, we have seen tremendous opportunities which indigenous innovation can give us. So what is it that we are trying to do, or I'm trying to build in with my team here, is what do we learn from there? Because the challenge with indigenous innovation also is that it's often very localized. It's difficult to replicate in other locations. So it's difficult to say that the same tree or the same conditions can be replicated, but the learning can be, the attitude can be. And that's what I want to bring in and see if AI or technology can come in to enable those learnings in other environments, which are economically feasible and environmentally sustainable. And that's the third box in italics that I want to do. We started applying this in strategic thinking and decision making. But with my love for design thinking, I quickly understood that this can change the way we look at design thinking as well. So that's what we are doing. We are trying to reimagine education pedagogies and curriculum through this kind of an approach. So many of you have heard me talk about 7 generations thinking, which is a Native American principle. But I'm also studying about an ancient Indian principle, a Sanskrit principle of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, which is may all be happy. And if you see the meaning row, you'll see all of them are talking the same thing. Janice, in that famous bus journey that we took in Izmir, was talking about Ubuntu. And I'm reading up about that, and I am so touched and moved. And I want to really learn this a lot more. And of course, from Latin America, I mean, when I worked in the US, I had faced this. Is again the same thing about communities and cultures coming together for good of humanity, good of mankind. And talking of humanity, Srini is very interested to know what I'm doing. So I have a call with him on Thursday for DNDA. So this, therefore, is what I am bringing to you today. I just want to close with my last 2 slides. That bringing it all together, it's not just the 7 generations principle, but learning from a lot of these, what I'm calling the global generational stewardship principle. It's a very basic name. I am sure I'll come up with a pithy, smarter one soon. But the objective here is to bring in these learnings and see what can it do to reimagine design thinking. And if you pardon me or allow me, I want to show you that one image that I have created. And this is what it looks like. I'm reimagining the 5 stages as remember, reframe, reimagine, recreate, and renew. It is the 5 stages of our famous design thinking process, but I'm changing the stakeholders to earth, air, water, and generations. You see them as the bigger circles. In between, the green circle is coming from the 7 generations principle of past, present, and future. And what are our inputs? Inputs are generational knowledge, but also AI, pestle factors that define geopolitics. And of course, again, my workshop folks saw a future generation giving input to the present generation about decisions and learning from each other. Can the earth tell us that the decision we are taking today, what will its impact be 10 years later? Interestingly, we are also using this in technology where the definition of a generation is 3 years. That's also working. A couple of our clients have loved it and are trying to do this in their organizations now. And finally, that's what we want to do. Bring in generations, bring in cultures, and bring in welfare of everyone, including the planet. So this is my call to action to you. If you want to know more, again, I am also just learning. I will tell you that. Again, all humility, this is work in progress. But if you have in your mind, you're in a country or in a space which has an indigenous culture, and there's a possibility to do research together and learn, I will be at your door. Just look me up. I am already co-creating pedagogies with 2 Indian colleges, and there's a lot of interest, one being IIT Delhi, one of India's absolute premier college in education, in engineering, and where I'm also going to be teaching from the next April semester, April or June, I'm not sure, whatever. But we are going to bring this new pedagogy to them. So that's also an open option. Happy to come to you and see what we can build together. So that's it. I wanted to again close with that same note I started. We are all learning here. We are all trying to learn and unlearn a lot. And I'm really happy that my last 6 years has taught me that. So I travel. That's my son on the extreme left. He's 16 and he already knows more jungles than I do. He takes his own friends on remote trips and he's insane about the forest. He's insane about the tiger. And I travel. I do a lot of work with communities around with cloth making, paper making, food work, etc. Because I think that's all we can do right now. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's been amazing. I loved the GDTA conference. It was one of my best things I've done. And yeah, I want to pause here. Thank you and have a great afternoon. I'm going to stop my share. That was a long monologue.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annirban. We have a lot of comments in the chat here, and you were inspiring us very heavily, actually. And I started thinking of in Germany. Now I'm in a different country, but in Germany, where to find those places. I have my grandmother. She was of that kind, but you are living in a country where you have actually those people at different places. Here, where I'm right now, it's pretty dark now. When I'm walking about 1 kilometer, I'm in kind of a jungle with wild apes and some people, and I'm inspired to do this walk pretty soon the next days and find people who are actually living here for lots of years.
Fantastic.
So, but there are questions for sure.
If I could just add one thing to you, Yuli, one point to you, Yuli, before I take the questions. One of the things we're doing in the curriculum design is actually creating capstone projects where students learn this entire principle and the process that we have, which is a journey. But then they go out and find local spaces for inspiration and innovation. It doesn't even need to be ancient, but I could learn something from a traditional way of problem solving. Yeah. And what do I learn? And make that my project. This is something we're doing because in many places, it's not that we have a 1,000-year history to rely on or communities are available or accessible. Yeah. So I think the whole objective is to, again, push the contours of our learning application. That's what I think is emerging. And this is an idea that I didn't come up with, but a professor who was working with me came up with, saying that, why don't we turn this around to say that, look at what's indigenous for you. And that changed the lens. So thank you. Thank you for that. And yes, happy to take any questions. What little I know.
Questions, comments, applause. Caro? Caroline?
Anyone?
I jumped out of I cannot see. Raika, you can help. You have to help me. I was falling out of the call.
Actually, I'm seeing some beautiful.
Back, so I don't see the chat anymore.
I can see Ivar and Carl, beautiful points. I would be happy to talk. Absolutely. And Carl, yes, there is a lot of science in this. I'm seeing. Yes, Janice, please. I see your hand.
Thanks, Annirban. Really, really inspiring. I loved your workshop in Izmir in Turkey. I think just one of the couple, lots of things that come out of my thinking and my feeling, but I think it's almost when one goes back to look at kind of ancient ways of knowing, doing, and being, it almost feels like it puts a real sense of accountability and responsibility on the present, because you want to bring those practices back in their fullness. And to do that, you need to do it kind of with full respect and accountability and not rush the process. So I just think, the whole thing of care at the center of it all, I think it asks different questions of us in the present if we go back fully into the past with kind of care and respect. So I just was reminded of the depth that can come with this kind of a practice and the temporality, the fact that it goes back so long. When you bring it into the present, you've got to treat it as that and not just, treat it with a very quick, fast approach.
Thank you, Janice.
That means shifting our mind. How do we work in the present? And design thinking is so time bound. Is that necessarily the best way to work with it? Or how do we need to think about how we do things differently in the present? So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Janice. Thank you for saying that. I think one of the discoveries is that whatever we are building, we are designing has consequences. And I think one of the things I often find is that there is a disconnection between our thinking of the here and now and the future. So, I mean, my first, I mean, while I was working in India, I also, when I was in the US, I got to understand the 7 generation principle. I did a couple of classes there, and I was just blown away by this entire idea of thinking of next 7 generations. So then what you did in the workshop also, right? People playing the roles of generations. So one of the things we're seeing in its application also is we're also learning to take responsibility for the past. So it's very easy to say that, oh, that's not my headache because it's happened before me. But when we give somebody the role of a past generation and she does the research and comes to you saying that these were the technologies available, or these were the market conditions or the geopolitical scenarios, I mean, we were working under to work with, and this is therefore we are here, you also develop a little bit of an empathy, I would say, for what happened before us. And exactly as you saw in the workshop, that feedback loop is so crucial. From the future to the present, from the past to the future, it is just beautiful. I'm sorry, I don't want to praise my own work here, but it's just say, I'm so moved in these workshops that, and you remember that little thing that these kids, the Izmir University kids and Chan, your kids were amazing. They came up with ideas for water conservation that we had no idea about. And it was just there. We had one or whatever number of hours, and it was amazing. And this is all talking across generations, keeping earth, air, and water in mind. And that can be expanded. We can take it in different directions. But I also think that we really need to go deep and be deeply respectful, because this is not something that superficially we can learn. And therefore, I think I'm discovering the value of research all over again, 30 years after leaving college. The importance of just going back and sitting at somebody's feet and learning how you do it, because it's also very unorthodox, very informal. Sometimes you just have to follow a guy around his village for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and just observe him, because he's not telling you anything, because he doesn't believe in telling. He doesn't know how to tell. And so it's funny in a lot of ways, but it's really very interesting to do. Thank you. Questions, thoughts? Thank you so much for your comments.
Who else?
Okay, yes, Raluka, it's your hand.
Sorry.
Raluka.
Go ahead, Raluka.
Sorry, I'm curious, Annirban, if you had the chance to observe any of the rituals these tribes had when meeting. For example, in Romania, some years, tens of years ago, women used to gather to knit every evening. There was a ritual, a place where they would all meet at the same hour, at the same time, knit and discuss.
Okay.
So did you have a chance to observe anything similar or something like that?
I haven't seen knitting per se. I've seen a lot of rituals that happen in the community, because as I said, the community is the center and the community decides everything. It's extremely democratic and extremely, I would say, inclusive in the way they decide. And in a lot of those gatherings, you have activities. So cooking together is a big one. But I know that knitting, for instance, I talked about the Toda women who make these stoles or shawls, which are intricately embroidered. I have heard, I've not been there during one such session. That's something that I want to remedy next year. But if you look at it the other way, Raluka, and hopefully when you're here next year for the GDTA conference, we'll be able to expose you to more indigenous arts. And you will find that embroidery is a huge element of shared stories, shared cultures, preserving the past, preserving narratives of the past. And you'll see that in pretty much every part of India. So I would assume that, yes, there would be such community activities, but this completely, disclosure, I haven't been to one yet to see knitting happen as such. Thank you. Ivar, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, really inspiring. And it triggers my previous background, what you're talking about. I have been, I've been studying anthropology and also using kind of their anthropological approach. And for me, you are actually like working as an anthropologist in a way.
Yes.
And that's really interesting because the method, I mean, the design thinking method, the empathy phase, the kind of ethnographic approach that is in design thinking. I think that's really, you are onto something very interesting here, and it triggers a lot of ideas or kind of insights for me when you're talking, and how to actually to also see how anthropological methods and anthropological approach can contribute to our Western, I mean the scientific or the approach or the scientific society that we are living in today. And I think, and especially it recalls me when I was studying and I was reading a lot about Claude Lévi-Strauss and the French anthropologist, when he talks about in the book The Savage Mind, where he describes the difference between the scientific thinking and the thinking that you are talking about, the process, and where he describes this kind of disconnection or also connection. But it's really interesting to see how this actually can works in kind of inspire, but to not lose that perspective or this approach, what you're talking about. How can we intertwine it with our society? How can it become something that we can actually, as you're trying to do, to learn from? How can we really learn from that?
Absolutely.
For the future. So for me, it was really, I just want to say that's really inspiring to hear.
Thank you, Ivar. Thank you. Yes. When we studied design, ethnography was an important element of it. But one of the challenges also I'm sure you have faced, or at least we face here, is we have commoditized design thinking and put it into such neat boxes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just don't want to go too deep to discover.
Yeah.
And process, I mean, we have become, I'm almost terrified of tools. You know, just have these 5 tools, make a persona, make a journey map, and you're done.
Yeah.
That's it. I sometimes miss the depth when I started doing it in 2009-10 versus now. And also one of the things, and I'll be very pragmatic here because I work in the corporate space. The areas we realize is that there is also fatigue. That's why there are so many articles on design thinking is bullshit and design thinking is dead kind of a thing. I might not agree with them, but they're pulling out the way the world is seeing design thinking. It's a superficial and a frivolous thing that is just practiced without integrity or depth.
Yeah.
And so things that as I mentioned, I didn't approach this from design thinking angle. I learned it from the way they were innovating and solving problems, and learned it from the way strategies can be decided, thinking long-term consequence. Then through research, I realized that their process mirrors what we now call design thinking, which often enough in the global South, we struggle to kind of contextualize because our challenges are very different. Our context is very different. Where I think we have discovered that the intuitive indigenous approaches, exactly as you wrote in your comment, it has science in it. For instance, the Apatani women that I spoke about use gravity and stone and different types of stone to channel water. The agriculture is, I mean, the depth of the pond where they also have fish and they have paddy. It's just perfect. And it's masterful. But it is something that they have discovered with many iterations over time and arrived here. And this is deep science, this is physics, absolutely nothing else. As a science, I mean, I remember my school physics, but nobody's taught them. They just know it.
Yeah.
And I realized that just knowing it has a lot of intrinsic value that we are missing out because we're not going deep enough. So my whole objective was, I was very tired of doing design thinking in the conventional way. I went to Darden, then I went to HPI. I became a coach at HPI in 2019. And I mean, taking nothing away from these beautiful places and lovely learning, but when I try to apply it in the world, I realized that a lot of our learning a lot of our process have become very structured and, within walls, that this is what we do and we have to do it in 2 days. When you're sitting there, you can't do things in 2 days. To Janice's point, patience is important.
Yeah.
You have to immerse yourself, and it's not easy. But my objective, and that's what I hope to get, is to build a process out of this.
Mm.
And that's the whole point of different stakeholders, different impact, different dimensions. So when the moment I bring in Earth as a stakeholder in a classroom of, let's say, in a factory where they're trying to figure out, zero emissions, suddenly the conversation changes because Earth raises its hand and says, I have something to tell you about your strategy. And they're, wow, okay, this is interesting. And then listen, so you suddenly see that the air change in the room.
Yeah, yeah,
I've seen some very interesting outcomes come from here.
yeah. That sounds great.
Positive outcomes come from here.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Late.
It was really, really inspiring, especially here also for me. And I hope that some of the people I'm meeting tomorrow to start the D School are still in the call and did what and witness what you were talking about. Because what I was trying to bring to them is the idea to really not just stay in the school here, but actually go out here at the countryside, talk to the fishermen because we are at the ocean, talk to the farmers, talk to the people who are kind of moved away by that huge buildings here from different schools. And then so I'm even more double encouraged to do that and bring that kind of idea. And I ask all of them to watch the recording because the recording is done. Hopefully, Raika, sure. And since the hour is over now and I need to move out here, my hosts are waiting for me outside. But before I jump out of the Zoom call, I want to make you aware of the Spotlight sessions in January and February next year, because this is the last one for this year. In January, we will have the GDTA member Ricardo Rufo from Brazil as our speaker, and he will talk about the relationship between AI and design thinking. So probably very much in the other direction. And in February, we will have Agnes Kwek from Singapore as our guest. She was already at one of our conferences a guest, and she worked for 10 years at the presidential office in Singapore, bringing design thinking to all the ministries in Singapore. And the dates, I think, Raika, the dates are not confirmed yet, but January, February is set, so we'll communicate that soon. And last but not least, also the September 29 and 30, we are going to have our next annual GDTA conference in India. And now I start thinking about the topic again. Annirban, you inspired me and us to think about the core topic of the conference. It's not set yet. We are in the discussion right now with the chapter, with the India chapter members. It will happen at the SNS institutions in Coimbatore. So mark your calendar, but the whole Indian chapter is involved in planning. So I'm really looking forward. And last but not least, thanks again, Anirban, for your great talk, for the insights and getting us together with this kind of very ingenious creators, and it was mind-blowing to me. Thanks, Raika, for preparing everything, getting the whole thing together for the whole year. You were setting up every call. You were at the heart of the GDTA. Thanks to all of you for joining. And for those of you who are celebrating Christmas, like we are doing in Germany, for example, have a great Christmas, have a great end of the year, and hope to see all of you soon in January with our next Spotlight session. And goodbye, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good midnight, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I had a pleasure. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays. Really enjoyed the session, Annirban.
Happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you, India.
Bye.